Really, Fox? A YA movie that is a X-Men ripoff? Darkest Minds, directed by Jennifer Yu Nelson, starring Amandla Stenberg from the Hunger Games franchise. She played Rue in that movie, and she was also in Everything Everything. In this movie, she plays a teenager named Ruby who has special powers. And the plot of this movie is there is a post-apocalyptic world. Gee, we haven't heard that before. This frequency goes off and kills some teenagers, but the teenagers that do survive end up with special abilities. Not everyone has the same ability. The differences between abilities is based on what color your eye glows. Red means you're pyrokinetic. Orange means that you have the power to control minds and you're telepathic. And mostly it's mental domination is the power that people who are orange have, which is what Ruby has. She has the power of mental domination and she has the power of mind manipulation. She can mess with people's memories. Then you have those whose eyes glow blue. They are telekinetic. And then there are those whose eyes glow yellow. They have electrical powers. And finally, there are those whose eyes glow green, and they have super intelligence. And of course, these teenagers are broken off into different factions based on the kind of powers that they have. Very much like Divergent, and they're put into concentration camps. Gee, we haven't seen that before, although we've never seen that in the X-Men movies. The main girl, Ruby, played by Amandla Stenberg, eventually finds her way out because a doctor within the concentration camp helps her get out, played by Mandy Moore, which is something we've seen before in some of these other movies. She ends up in this resistance group, again something we've seen before with some other groups of teenagers. One of them is telekinetic, the telekinetic boy whose power is mostly deals with magnetism, the Magneto of the group in a way, but he's not very supremacist like Magneto. He becomes her love interest. There is a girl with electrical powers, a young little Asian girl, who is very much like Jubilee, but gets more character development than the Jubilee from X-Men Apocalypse. And she has electrical powers and her eyes glow yellow. And the final member of the resistance group, Chubbs, his eyes glow green, he has powers, super intelligence. And he's the comic relief of the group, and there are times when he is funny, but mostly he's very, very annoying. And they end up beating the leader of the resistance, who ends up being the president's son. The president in this movie is played by Bradley Whitford, President Gray, and the president's son is also a mutant. He is being used as this poster child to prop up this idea that maybe there's a cure for these special abilities. Maybe there's a way to get rid of the special abilities, or maybe there's not a way to get rid of the special abilities. I don't want to spoil it if you decide to see the movie. But honestly, this movie is not very good. It is not really worth seeing at all, in my opinion. This movie is so derivative from other YA movies. It rips off scenes from the X-Men franchise to the point that the scene where the boy with magnetism powers, when he gets introduced, it's exactly like the scene where Magneto gets introduced in the X-Men franchise when he was very young. You see the boy with magnetism powers using his power on a gate. Oh wow, I wonder where you got that idea from. Could it be from the scene where Magneto gets introduced as a young boy and he's using his power on a gate? Really? And just a lot of things like this is just so annoyingly derivative and so boring and so dull with this movie, and so predictable too. I did like the fact that even though this movie has concentration camps, and we've seen concentration camps in young adult movies before, the fact that this movie has concentration camps, but the X-Men movies never had concentration camps before. That was actually kind of nice, because I never saw concentration camps within the X-Men Days of Future Past, which would have been a perfect movie to have that, or one of the other X-Men movies, but they never did that within the X-Men franchise. But really, overall, this is not that good of a movie. This movie's so dull. It's really not all that memorable. I feel like I'm not going to remember this movie in about a week, really. The villain in this movie is so obvious and so predictable. Really, the only thing I did like about this movie, the only things I did like about this movie were a couple of the characters, really. I did like Amanda's character, Ruby. I did like the boy that she ends up falling for, even though it's your typical love interest boy that you see in these movies. And I did like the Asian girl in the movie, the girl Zhu. I did like her in the film. And I thought Mandy Moore was okay in the movie. But overall, this movie is just so dull and forgettable, it's really not worth seeing. So I'm going to give this movie a C-. This movie is not worth it. If you're going to end up seeing it, wait till it comes out on Netflix or Redbox and go see it that way, really. Because this movie's not worth it for the theaters. There are much better movies to see. 8th Grade is a much better movie for teenagers to see. Even though that movie is rated R, and I don't understand why that movie's rated R. That movie's rated R because of language, some scenes that I guess they felt were a bit too much for teenagers, but really none of the scenes in there were a bit too much for teenagers, in my opinion. But this movie is not worth seeing, Darkest Minds. Don't bother seeing this movie. I don't even think this movie's going to get the sequels that Fox hopes that is going to get. I think the reason why they made this movie is because with the Fox Disney deal that's coming up soon, where Disney's trying to acquire different properties from Fox, they may be acquiring the Alien franchise, the Predator franchise, the X-Men franchise, the Fantastic Four franchise, the Simpsons, and some other properties from Fox that Fox wanted to have something that Disney didn't want to have in order to continue X-Men-like stories. But I don't think this movie is going to get any sequels because it's not very good. So don't bother seeing this movie. In fact, I'm hearing it's bombing at the box office. And that's all I got to say for Darkest Minds.